Broadcasting live from Youngville, North Carolina and Ontario, Canada, this is Gotmead Live, a weekly show where Vicky Rowe and AJ Aramitz bring you the Mead news, meadery info, and mead-making discussions from all over, talking with mead makers, mead owners, industry mavens, and influencers. This is Gotmead Live, a weekly podcast about mead and the people who love it and where the mead world is going. And now here are your hosts, Gotmead owner Vicky Rowe and mead and wine maker AJ Aramitz.
And live from the den of the puppies of the apocalypse, Vicky is back home now. Squatchy's pad in Colorado, the TARDIS in Florida, and the bunny pen in Ottawa, Canada. It's Gotmead Live. Welcome to the show. Now, Vicky is still short of breath, so she's rationing herself to one sentence per time she opens her mouth. And tonight we're talking oak with Ryan Carlson. He's going to be taking more of a leading role in the show today, too. Vicky's running the board backstage, and let's see, what else have we got here? I'm going to go through all the show backdoor stuff first. You can listen to us live on the Gotmead website, or if you're mobile or want to listen later, check us out on iTunes, SoundCloud, or TuneIn Radio at tunein.com. Do a search for Gotmead Live. Replays back to the beginning of the show are available on Gotmead.com, Spreaker.com, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Stitcher Radio. Just search for Gotmead Live. We now have a show player right on our Facebook page at facebook.com/Gotmead. Come check it out. You can find us at Facebook, facebook.com/Gotmead, and facebook.com/groups/Gotmead. We're at Twitter, at Gotmead Now. If you can't, call us, tweet us. Making Mead Back to Basics, you can check our links on Gotmead.com, and you can call in live at 803-443-MEAD. And you can become a supporting patron member for $30 a year and get access to so much more on Gotmead.com. And, you know, we all do this for free. We take time out of our busy schedules to put on a show for everyone. And any contribution helps keep the show running because there are costs associated with everything. All right, so let's get started with what we're drinking. Vicky, what are you drinking tonight?
I have a nice bottle of Moonlight Meadery Kisses, which is their sweet strawberry mead. It's got all this strawberry nose and flavor. It's really nice, and it's this gorgeous color. It's really a nice mead.
Pretty. And Ryan, what have you got tonight?
Well, I actually have two things looking me in the face. I have a port-style triple berry that I fortified, and it tastes like a wonderful port. And then I also made a prune fig date melomel that I also fortified and oaked pretty heavily, and it tastes quite a lot like a sweet cherry, I guess. A little bit of some Madeira-type notes to it as well.
Okay, and I am drinking water tonight because I've got to go in and put a full shift in after the show. I believe Manny is going to be joining us soon, so we'll ask him what he's drinking when we get to that part. Well, I guess we'll just get right into it.
Yeah, sounds good to me. So, Ryan, I had asked you originally to come talk oak before I shanghaied you into becoming one of the show hosts. So I'm going to hand it off to AJ to kind of lead the conversation since it hurts to talk. But I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. I know everybody else out there is too.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, so Ryan, why do we use oak?
That's an awesome question. I think it's an under-asked question, actually. I personally feel like using different oak components, and a lot of time I'll refer to that as a barrel component. I think it's one of the major tools that we should all know how to use very intimately in making mead. It's no different, in my opinion, than also having the opportunity to choose different yeasts or honeys, or in other words, it's a very incredible ingredient that can do a huge array of things, and I don't think that people in general are using it even remotely closely to how well it can be used in meads. And so what I wanted to do tonight, I'm going to briefly kind of touch on all the different things that we're going to speak on over the course of the evening, and then, of course, we'll drop back and we'll look at each one of those individually a little bit more intensely. So why do we use oak? Because it adds a tremendous amount of complexity. It can be used for flavors, aromas. Sometimes it's hard for me to know the difference between a flavor and aroma. I mean, when you smell something, certainly that makes you think you're going to taste it in your mead, and sometimes you do and sometimes you don't. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we're going to talk about the different things that mead can be used for. We're going to look at the different types of oak, the different species, and where they come and how they prepare them to make them actually work. Many people might be surprised that you just can't go down to Home Depot and buy an oak board, take it home and put it in your stove and cook it, and voila, you've got some nice oak. It doesn't work that way. There's some other things that needs to happen. And so then we'll look at the components of oak, what's in it and why it does what it does, and then we'll look at the different species so that we can look at an American oak versus a Hungarian versus a French. Each of those have some very unique traits and nuances that they can add to our meads, and so we'll kind of talk about them and get an idea of which one does what and why, and then we'll talk about how do we actually use it, how do you apply it in, the application portion. And then I've got some generalized kind of things that are general summary, so to speak. We can talk about toast levels and temps and what that does, and then we'll go back and kind of summarize that all. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on is people go, well, okay, I'm not quite sure I really know what to do still, even after you've given us all this information. And I think what you'll be really pleased to find out is that you can actually make a tea with your oak cubes, just like you would with a tea bag. And then, in fact, when I teach this in a group where I'm, face to face with people, I bring a bunch of different oak teas to the presentation. And when we sit down at one point in time, and we're all sitting here drinking little glasses of oak and talking about the nose and the flavor, and then at the end of the day, we take all those different teas and we add them and start playing with them in different meads that people have brought along or ones that I'll bring, so that you can actually have a hands-on application portion. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight in a nutshell, and we're going to go back and go through each of those a little bit more slowly, and hopefully we'll have some questions from our listeners coming in and whatnot. So,
okay.
Perfect question, AJ.
Sounds like you got a lot of this in hand. Just for our readers' or for our listeners' backgrounds, you know a lot about this. How did you get to that point? How did you get started?
Yeah, that's my nature. People that know me think they have a tendency to say, well, everything you do great. Well, that's not at all the case. But everything that I do with a passion, I have a huge passion for. And so my son actually calls me the overdose man, because everything that I really get into, I totally get into it. I've only been making mead about 3 years, but I'm the type of person that I don't very easily just take somebody's comments full hard and swallow it. In other words, I learned all the things that I did learn because I've spent a tremendous amount of time studying, as if I was in college, and I'd be reading all of these peer reviews and PhD reports and all of the kind of technical things that a lot of people won't bother to invest in. And so that's how I've learned these things over time. Is really, I feel like I've read just about everything I could possibly ever read on the internet, and then I take those things home and actually try to apply them and learn them so that I actually own that information rather than just being head knowledge.
Okay, cool. So where did you want to get started?
Well, so like I said, I guess I feel that oak is a very underutilized tool that we can have to make our meads, in my opinion, quite a lot better. One of the things that I've done almost as much as I can't buy a whole lot of different meads here in Colorado, believe it or not. at least not on the liquor stores shelves. But when I do buy meads, I'll take them home and I'll open them up, and I think within 5 minutes I can generally do a little bit of tweaking with the meads that I do buy, and I make them, in my opinion, and almost in everybody else that likes to play the A and B game, let's try this and then let's see what we did to make it different. In my opinion, it's very easy to take almost everything that I can buy on the shelves and bring home and make it better just by adding a little bit of this and that. And so I think that it's an underutilized tool in our toolbox. And I think that if people really understood all of the nuances that can be had and then get a better grip of how to use them, I think everybody can make a lot more interesting meads. And so we could talk about why then, what do we get when we look at oak and say, well, why me? Why do I want to use oak, and what can I get from it? Well, so it adds a bunch of different things. It adds flavors. And in those flavors, we'll talk about the actual flavors. But so if you wanted to look at oak, they can make flavors come alive. You can add aroma. So you can add all these different pieces to the nose. You can change the perception of a mead. In other words, it might read one thing gravity-wise, but you can dry out a wet mead. In other words, I once made a very sweet mead and intentionally used a particular oak to make it present. The gravity didn't change, but I made it from being really sweet to almost tasting off dry, just by adding the right kind of oak. And so you can change the perception without really changing, the numbers. And so along with the aroma, we have astringency and tannins. They're kind of the same thing. And then lastly, you can also use it to stabilize colors. People don't realize that, but if you put oak in your fermentation, especially on, fruit melons, maybe strawberries, awful easy to lose its color. Oaks will actually help to stabilize the color as well. And so flavor-wise, we can get vanilla, coconut, caramel, butterscotch, spices. And when I say spices, what does that mean? I don't know, except, people will drink something and go, well, it's kind of spicy. And that would also include cloves. You always hear on wine reviews how they can smell leather in a cigar box, and it's kind of peppery, woody, campfire, coffee, chocolate. So those are the types of flavors that you can get. Now, it also can add complexity, and what I'm talking about there is not only just the combination of different flavors, but it'll add complexity to the nose, and it will actually change the way that your tongue perceives it, and so you can use it to create different tactile experiences. In other words, the mouthfeel. You probably know by drinking, like an Earl Grey tea or some of the teas, when you drink it, it almost feels like your teeth are bone dry and you're licking sandpaper.
Yep, that's it.
Right? I mean, of course. And so that's a tactile experience, if you will. And so you can add, and so by understanding the astringency and the tannins, you can take a fat, flabby mead that's kind of uninspiring and a little bit too heavy, and you can add some grip to it. So, in other words, you can put it on a diet almost immediately, and it's not so fat and flabby. You can take some meads that are very watered down and thin, and by adding certain oaks, you can increase the mouth volume. Some people are quite surprised when we make the teas that you can actually feel like, and I know this sounds weird about talking about a tea being chewy, but it actually makes it feel kind of chewy.
Having had a bunch of different kinds of, teas that are supposed to be drunk as teas, I can understand how you can say that.
Yeah, I know that kind of sounds weird, but so most people don't realize that when we understand how to use oak and know which ones to pick, you can,